Shin Ji-woo had picked up a cake. That was the thing that kept running through his mind later, when everything had already fallen apart. He had stood in the bakery for 20 minutes, going back and forth between chocolate ganache and matcha cream, and he had chosen the chocolate because Hyun always said it was his favorite. He had even asked the girl at the counter to write, "Hap 3 years, my love," in careful red letters on the top. He carried it home on the subway, holding the box with both hands so it would not tilt. He was smiling the whole ride. Ji-woo and Kang Hyun had been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. They shared an apartment in the quieter part of the city, the kind of place with a small balcony where Ji-woo grew tomatoes in little pots and Hyun complained they took up too much space but never actually made him remove them. It was a good life. Small, warm, and full of the kind of ordinary happiness that Ji-woo had always wanted. He reached the front door. He noticed it was unlocked. He thought Hyun must have forgotten. He did that sometimes. He stepped inside. The lights in the living room were off, but the bedroom light was on. He could see the strip of yellow light under the door. He could also hear voices. Low, quiet, but unmistakably 2 of them. Ji-woo stood in the hallway for a moment. He set the cake box down on the side table very carefully, slowly. He did not know why he did that. Maybe he already knew what he was about to see, and some part of him wanted to do one last ordinary thing before his life changed. He opened the bedroom door. He did not scream. He did not cry. He just stood there in the doorway and looked. Hyun saw him first. His face went completely white. The other person, someone Ji-woo had never seen before, Young panicked, scrambled to pull the sheets up. "Ji-woo," Hyun started. "How long?" Ji-woo said. His voice came out very flat. He barely recognized it. Hyun did not answer right away, and that silence was its own kind of answer. "How long, Hyun?" 7 months, Hyun said quietly. 7 months. That meant it had started 2 months after the engagement. 2 months after Ji-woo had said yes with shaking hands and happy tears, and a heart so full he thought it might actually burst from joy. Ji-woo nodded once. He turned around. He walked back down the hallway, picked up the cake box from the side table. He did not know why, he just picked it up and walked out the front door. He sat on the steps outside the building for a long time. He opened the cake box and looked at the red letters. "Happy 3 years, my love." The chocolate ganache was perfect and shiny. He closed the box again without eating any of it. He did not cry, not then. He just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside him and left the shell standing. His phone buzzed. A message from Hyun, then another, then a call. He stared at the screen and did not pick up. He had nowhere to go. His parents were 3 cities away. His best friend Daein was on a work trip abroad. He had built so much of his life around Hyun that he had let most of his other connections grow thin. He started walking. It was cold. He had not brought a jacket because he had been planning to come straight home and have a nice dinner and watch a movie curled up on the couch. He walked anyway, cake box in hand, through streets that were emptying out as the night got later. He ended up in front of a brightly lit hotel bar, more by accident than intention. He pushed the door open because it was warm inside. He sat at the bar and ordered something he pointed to on the menu without reading it. It turned out to be some kind of whiskey drink that tasted like wood and smoke. He drank it slowly. That was when he heard the voice. Low, calm, precise. "You look like someone just destroyed your life." Ji-woo turned. The man sitting 2 stools away was looking at him without any expression at all. He was dressed like someone who had come from a very serious meeting. Dark suit, no tie, sharp jaw, dark eyes, a face that seemed to be set permanently in mild disapproval of the world around him. He was extraordinarily good-looking in a way that felt cold, like a sculpture rather than a person. Ji-woo stared at him. "Someone did," Ji-woo said. The man looked at him for a moment longer than was comfortable. "What's in the box?" he said. Ji-woo looked down at the cake. "A mistake," he said. The man looked at the cake, then back at Ji-woo. Something in his expression shifted. Not warmth, exactly, but something. "Buy you a drink," he said. It was not really a question. Ji-woo had no idea who this person was. "Sure," he said. That was how Shin Ji-woo met Han Serin, and nothing was ever the same after that. Ji-woo woke up the next morning on a very expensive couch. He sat up fast, looked around the unfamiliar room, floor-to-ceiling windows, gray and white everything. A skyline he recognized as the city's most expensive district, and for about 4 seconds he had the worst thought of his life. Then he noticed he was fully dressed. His shoes were neatly placed beside the couch. There was a glass of water on the coffee table, and 2 tablets of something that looked like headache medicine. He breathed out, a door opened and Han Serin walked in. He was in different clothes now, a fitted charcoal shirt, dark pants, and he was carrying 2 cups of coffee as if this was a completely normal situation. He set 1 cup in front of Jiwoo and sat in the chair across from him. "You fell asleep in the cab," he said. "I had the driver bring you here. You kept saying you had nowhere to go." Jiwoo stared at him. "I said that several times." Jiwoo pressed his hands over his face. "I'm sorry. I don't usually. I didn't ask for an explanation." Jiwoo looked up. Han Seren was looking at him with that same flat, unreadable expression, not unkind. Just completely neutral, like a wall that did not push back but also did not open. "Thank you," Jiwoo said, "for not." He stopped. "Just. Thank you." Seren nodded once. He drank his coffee. Jiwoo drank his too. It was very good coffee. "Who are you?" Jiwoo asked. "Han Seren. I know your name, I mean." He gestured vaguely at the apartment, which was the size of a small country. "Who are you?" "CEO Han Group." Jiwoo almost dropped his coffee. He knew that name, everyone knew that name. Han Group was one of the 3 largest conglomerates in the country, with fingers in real estate, tech, hospitality, and about 6 other industries Jiwoo could not name off the top of his head. The Han family had been powerful for 2 generations, and from what Jiwoo had read in passing, in news articles he barely paid attention to, Han Seren had taken the company over at 26 and doubled its value in 4 years. He was also, apparently, terrifying to work with. "You're that Han Seren," Jiwoo said. "Is there another one?" "People say you fired an entire department because one report had a typo." Seren looked at him. "It had 47 typos, and it went to an external partner. It was embarrassing." Jiwoo could not decide if that was reasonable or insane. "Okay." Seren watched him in that very still way he had, like he was cataloging information. "What's your name?" Seren said. "Jiwoo." Something changed in Seren's face. Not much, just a very slight shift around the eyes. He set his coffee cup down. "Shinji-woo," he repeated slowly. "Yes, you're engaged to Kang Hyun." The name landed in Jiwoo's chest like something thrown hard. He felt his face tight. The was past tense. As of last night. Seren was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved over Jiwoo's face like he was reading something written there. "Kang Hyun cheated," Seren said. It was not a question. Jiwoo blinked. "How did you?" "Because it's Kang Hyun." Something came into Seren's voice then, very brief, like a cold blade shone and then put away. "He does what is convenient for him. He always has." Jiwoo stared. "You know him? We have a history." "What kind of history?" Seren picked his coffee cup back up. "The kind I don't talk about." But the way he said it, quiet and final, and with something underneath that Jiwoo could not name, told Jiwoo it was not a small history. It was the kind that leaves marks. Jiwoo sat with that for a moment. "I had nowhere to go last night," Jiwoo said quietly. "I built my whole life around him. I gave up my old apartment. We have joint accounts. I don't even." He stopped. His throat was tight. "I don't know where to start." Seren looked at him, then he said something that changed everything. "I have a proposal." Jiwoo looked up. "Sorry, a business proposal of sorts." Seren set his cup down with a soft click. "I need a partner for a public event in 3 weeks, a shareholders' gala. I have reasons for needing to appear." Settled. "Someone beside me who is not a business associate." His eyes were steady and very direct. "Kang Hyun will be in attendance. His company is trying to partner with ours. I intend to reject the proposal in the most public way possible. Having you beside me will complicate things for him significantly." The room was very quiet. Jiwoo felt something he had not expected. Not hurt, not confusion, something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. "You want to use me to humiliate him," Jiwoo said. "I want to humiliate him," Seren said. "Whether or not you benefit from that arrangement is your choice." Jiwoo looked at this cold, unreadable billionaire who spoke in complete sentences and never smiled, and had somehow ended up being the person sitting across from him the morning after his life fell apart. He thought about the cake box, the red letters. 7 months. "What do I get out of it?" Jiwoo said. Seren named a number. Jiwoo went very still. "And," Seren added, "a place to stay while you get back on your feet." Jiwoo should have said no. Every reasonable part of him knew that. "Okay," he said instead. Seren's expression did not change at all, but he reached forward and offered his hand. Jiwoo shook it. Firm, warm, real. Homus and Seren was like moving in with a very well-dressed ghost. Jiwoo was given a guest room on the opposite end of the penthouse from Seren's bedroom. The guest room was bigger than the entire apartment he had shared with Hyun. It had its own bathroom, a walk-in wardrobe that was depressingly empty, a desk with a lamp that had warm light, and a window that looked out over the whole east side of the city. He stood in the middle of it with a single bag. He had gone back to the old apartment while Hyun was out, packed what he could carry, and left before his brain made him stop, and felt very, very small. Seren appeared in the doorway. The housekeeper comes on Mondays and Thursdays, he said. Don't leave dishes in the living room. I eat breakfast at 7 and I don't talk during it. If you work from home, you can use the desk in the study, second door on the left. The code for the building is. You can slow down, Jiwoo said. Saren stopped. He looked at Jiwoo like he had said something genuinely surprising. Sorry, Jiwoo said. A lot has happened in the last 24 hours. Can you give me 5 minutes to stand here before we go through the rules? Another pause. Saren seemed to recalibrate something internally. 5 minutes, he said. Then he turned and left. Jiwoo sat on the edge of the bed. It was incredibly soft. He pressed his hands into the comforter and breathed. Okay, he was doing this. He was living in a billionaire's penthouse as part of a fake relationship deal to get back at the man who had cheated on him for 7 months while Jiwoo was growing tomatoes on the balcony and picking out anniversary cakes. His life had become a drama, a very expensive one. The first week was strange. Saren was home in the mornings and evenings but spent most of the day at his office. He moved through the apartment like everything in it had been placed with purpose, and he respected that purpose absolutely. He did not make noise. He did not leave things out of place. He did not, as far as Jiwoo could tell, ever fully relax. Jiwoo, by contrast, was chaos given a human shape. Not bad chaos, but he hummed while he made coffee. He left his sketchbook open on the coffee table. He was a freelance illustrator, which was how he'd been spending his days. And sometimes he moved the throw pillows around because the arrangement bothered him. He accidentally used Saren's very expensive olive oil to make eggs one morning and felt terrible about it. He told Saren at dinner, or tried to. I used your olive oil this morning. The one from Italy. I didn't realize it was different. I'm sorry. Saren looked up from his phone, looked at Jiwoo, looked back at his phone. It's olive oil, he said. It's very expensive olive oil. I have more. Jiwoo poked at his food. You're hard to read. Saren set his phone down. He looked at Jiwoo with that level, unblinking gaze that Jiwoo was slowly getting used to. People say that, he said. Does it bother you? No. Why not? A pause. Because what people read in me is usually what they bring to it, Saren said. Their expectations, their own fears, none of it is actually about me. Jiwoo sat with that. That's a very lonely thing to believe, Jiwoo said quietly. Something passed over Saren's face, very fast, there and gone. It's practical, Saren said. They went back to eating in silence. But it was a slightly different silence than before, less empty. On Thursday of the first week, Jiwoo's best friend Daein came back from her trip, heard the whole story over the phone, and immediately video called him while standing in her airport with her suitcase still rolling behind her. You are living where? She screamed. Please lower your voice. Jiwoo, Hansurin. The Hansurin. The one who made Park Corporation cry at that press conference last year. What? He's terrifying, Jiwoo. He's like a very pretty wall. He's not, he's fine. He's actually. Jiwoo glanced toward the hallway. He's decent, when you get used to it. Daein stared at him through the screen for a long time. You like him, she said. I've known him for 6 days. You like him. I'm going to hang up now. The cheating fiancé to cold billionaire pipeline is real. Jiwoo hung up. His ears were warm. He stared at the ceiling for a moment. No, he did not like Han Saren. This was a deal. A clean, straightforward deal with an end date. He picked up his sketchbook. He was not thinking about Saren. He absolutely was not thinking about the way Saren had said, it's olive oil, like it was the simplest, most uncomplicated thing in the world. He says not. Across the apartment, he heard the quiet click of Saren's study door opening. Then footsteps. Then the soft sound of Saren setting something down in the kitchen. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the open living room doorway. Saren was holding a cup of tea. You didn't have coffee after dinner, he said. I thought. A very brief pause, like he was checking something inside himself. You usually have something warm in the evenings. Jiwoo stared at the cup. He had noticed. This impossibly unreadable man had noticed. Thank you, Jiwoo said softly. Saren set the cup on the table. He turned to leave. Saren, Jiwoo said. He stopped. The gala is in 2 weeks, Jiwoo said. Should we practice being a couple? So it looks real? Saren turned back. He looked at Jiwoo for a long moment. We'll figure it out, he said, but he did not leave immediately. He stood there for a beat longer than he needed to, and for just a second, something in his expression was not neutral at all. Then he was gone. Jiwoo looked down at the cup of tea and smiled without meaning to. This was going to be a problem. Daeyoon insisted on helping. She showed up at the penthouse on a Saturday morning with 2 shopping bags and so much energy that even the very controlled air of Saren's apartment seemed to vibrate with it. She took one look at the place. Then one look at Saren, who had answered the door himself, and went completely still. Then she said, "Your face is very symmetrical." Saren looked at her. "Thank you," he said. "That wasn't a compliment, that was an observation." "Daein," Jiwoo said, pulling her inside. What followed was genuinely one of the most interesting 2 hours of Jiwoo's life. Daein had decided that the best way to prepare for the gala was to practice couple behavior, and she was directing it like she was producing a film. "Okay. Stand next to each other." They stood next to each other, closer. Jiwoo moved slightly closer. Saren did not move at all. Jiwoo ended up approximately 6 inches from him, aware of the warmth coming off him, aware that Saren smelled like something clean and faintly cedar-like. "Hold his hand," Dayan said. A pause. Saren looked at Jiwoo. His expression was entirely unreadable. He waited. Jiwoo reached over and took Saren's hand. It was warm. His grip was loose at first, then Saren's fingers adjusted, fitting around Jiwoo's properly, naturally almost. Jiwoo kept his eyes forward because he did not entirely trust his own face. "Good," Dayan said, writing something in her notebook like she was a director on a set. "Now, at the gala you'll need to look at each other sometimes. Not in a staring way. Just comfortable. Like you've been doing this for a while." "We've known each other for 2 weeks," Jiwoo said. "New couples look at each other too much. Long-term couples look at each other just enough. You need to hit that sweet spot." She pointed her pen at them. "Look at each other." Jiwoo turned his head. Saren was already looking at him. Close up, his eyes were darker than they seemed from a distance, with a kind of focus in them that was, a lot, like being looked at under a very gentle microscope. "Good," Dayan said softly, and this time her voice had lost some of its director energy. Neither of them looked away for a moment. Then Saren looked down at their joined hands and said, "Your left hand shakes slightly when you're nervous." Jiwoo pulled his hand back. "It does not." "It does. I'm not criticizing it. I'm not nervous." "You are." Dane slowly put her notebook down. Jiwoo turned back to face forward. "Can we move on to the next part of the practice?" "We were not practicing anything specific," Saren said. "Your friend just told us to stand next to each other and hold hands. That is practice, it's practicing. For standing next to each other and holding hands." "Yes," Jiwoo looked at him. "That's the point." Saren tilted his head just slightly. Something around his mouth was not quite a smile but was in the neighborhood of one. "I know," he said. "I was asking to hear what you'd say." Jiwoo stared at him. Dayan had her face behind her notebook. "You made a joke," Jiwoo said. "A small one. You're capable of jokes? On rare occasions." Jiwoo felt something happen in his chest. A small warm shift like a puzzle piece clicking into place. He looked away before it showed on his face. The practice sessions continued over the following days. Saren was surprisingly patient with all of it. The walking side by side, the brief natural touches on the arm or shoulder that a real couple would do, the learning of small details about each other, so they could talk about them at the gala without stumbling. Jiwoo learned that Saren had not taken a real vacation in 3 years, that he had taught himself to cook one dish, a specific slow-braised pork, because he had read it required patience, and he wanted to know if he was capable of it, that his relationship with his family was formal and complicated, that he read physical books, not digital ones, and he read fast, and there were always 3 or 4 stacked on his bedside table. Saren learned that Jiwoo cried at animated movies without exception, that he had been drawing since he was 4 years old, that his dream was to publish a graphic novel someday, but he had never told anyone because saying it out loud made it feel fragile, that he genuinely believed tomato plants needed to be talked to. One evening, Jiwoo was sitting on the balcony. Saren had told him he could use it whenever he wanted, which had felt like a gift, a small quiet one, and Saren came out with the same tea ritual he had established. He sat beside Jiwoo this time. They looked at the city. "Are you still in love with him?" Saren asked. Jiwoo looked at the lights. He thought about the question for a real moment, not a defensive one. "No," he said. "I think I was in love with the idea of what we were, with the tomatoes and the cake and the future I thought we were building." He paused. "I missed the version of the story I thought I was in, not him." Saren was quiet. "I understand that," he said. Jiwoo glanced at him. There was something in Saren's face that was not his usual blankness, something older. "What happened between you and Hyun?" Jiwoo asked. Saren's jaw tightened very slightly. "Later," he said. "I'll tell you later." "Is that a real later or an I will never tell you later?" Saren looked at him. That not quite a smile was back. "A real one," he said. Jiwoo nodded. He believed him, which was surprising because he had not been sure he trusted him very much in the past few weeks. He looked back at the city. Their shoulders were touching. Neither of them moved apart. The dress code was black tie. Jiwoo stood in front of the mirror in clothes that did not belong to him, a deep navy suit that Saren had arranged, perfectly tailored, with a white shirt and no tie. Because when Jiwoo had tried the tie it looked wrong somehow, and Saren had walked in, looked at him for 2 seconds, and said take it off in a tone that ended the discussion, and tried to recognize himself. He looked different, not bad different, just sharp. Like someone had taken him and turned up a dial. Saren appeared in the doorway. He was in black. Completely black, suit and shirt, no tie. He looked like he had been designed by someone with a very clear vision. They looked at each other in the mirror. Ready? Saren said. Jiwoo took a breath. Define ready. Are you going to run? No, then ready is sufficient. The gala was held in the ballroom of a hotel that made Jiwoo feel underdressed just walking in, even in his expensive borrowed suit. Chandeliers, white flowers everywhere, music from a live quartet, people in clothes that cost more than Jiwoo's monthly rent. Saren walked in and the room shifted. Not visibly. Nobody screamed or pointed, but Jiwoo felt it. The subtle attention that moved towards Saren like water moving toward a drain. People watched him. Some came forward immediately to greet him. Business talk, smooth and fast, and Saren handled it effortlessly without losing his grip on the small of Jiwoo's back. Which was a thing that happened. Saren's hand on the small of his back, guiding him through the room. Present and steady and warm through the fabric of the suit. Jiwoo kept his face calm. He greeted the people Saren introduced him to with a smile. He remembered names. He made small conversation. He was good at this, actually. Better than he expected. Because he had always been the kind of person who could talk to almost anyone. Then he saw Hyun. Kang Hyun was standing near the bar, and he had not seen them yet. He was talking to 2 men in suits, laughing at something. His face open and easy and charming the way it had always been. Jiwoo felt his stomach go tight. Then Saren's hand pressed more firmly against his back. Just slightly, grounding. Jiwoo breathed out. Hyun turned and saw them. The change in his face was something Jiwoo would remember for a long time. The easy smile freezing, the eyes moving from Jiwoo to Saren, and the color leaving his face like someone had pulled a plug. Han, Saren, and Kang Hyun looked at each other across the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Saren looked away first, but it was not a retreat. It was dismissal. The kind of look that said, "You are not worth my full attention." He leaned down slightly toward Jiwoo. "He's seen us," Saren said quietly. "I know," Jiwoo said. "Do you want to leave?" Jiwoo looked at Hyun across the room. Hyun was still staring at him with something desperate in his face. Something that might have been guilt, or might have been the fear of consequences. "No," Jiwoo said. "I want him to watch." Something shifted in Saren's expression. He turned to look at Jiwoo more fully, and for just a second his eyes were warm, really warm, not just neutral, in a way that hit Jiwoo somewhere unprepared. "Good," Saren said. Later, there was a formal moment during the event where business partnerships were announced. Jiwoo watched from beside Saren as Hyun's company representative stood up and spoke with careful optimism about the potential collaboration with Han Group. Saren stood when it was time. He spoke without notes, calmly, precisely, the way he did everything. He thanked the representative for their interest. He said Han Group had reviewed the partnership proposal thoroughly. He said that after careful consideration, they had found the proposal did not meet their standards, not in numbers, but in character. He used that word specifically. Character. He said Han Group chose its partners with the same care it chose everything else, and that some associations were simply not ones they were willing to make. The silence in the room was absolute. Hyun's face was ash white. Saren sat back down. He reached under the table and found Jiwoo's hand. He held it and said nothing else, and Jiwoo felt something enormous and complicated move through his chest that he could not fully name. Afterward, Hyun found them. "Jiwoo," Hyun said. His voice was low and strained. "Can we talk?" Jiwoo looked at him. He waited to feel something, love or anger or grief, and what came was mostly just tired. "There's nothing to talk about," Jiwoo said. "Jiwoo." He looked at Saren. Something ugly flashed in his face. "Is this what this is? You're using him to get at me?" "He's using you, Jiwoo. He does this. He uses people." "Careful," Saren said. Just that word. Just once. Hyun stopped. Saren looked at him the way you might look at something unpleasant you had stepped on. "Whatever story you are about to tell him," Saren said quietly, "consider whether you want to tell it here, in front of this room, or whether you want to walk away." Hyun looked between them. His jaw worked. He walked away. Jiwoo exhaled slowly. He realized his hand was still in Saren's. He did not let go. 3 days after the gala, Jiwoo found a photograph. He was not snooping. He was looking for a pen in the study. Saren had told him the study was open to him, and he pulled open a side drawer and there it was. A printed photograph, slightly worn at the corner like it had been handled many times and then put away. It was Saren, younger, maybe 4 or 5 years younger, standing next to someone, smiling. A real smile, not the almost smile Jiwoo had occasionally seen, a full, unguarded, genuinely happy smile that made him look like a different person. The person next to him was not Hyun, but it was someone Jiwoo recognized. Someone who worked for Hyun's company now, someone who had been standing with Hyun at the gala. Jiwoo put the photograph back. That evening, Saren came home and found Jiwoo in the kitchen making dinner. He had decided that since Saren was letting him live here without complaint, the least he could do was cook sometimes, and sat at the kitchen island without being asked. He watched Jiwoo cook for a moment. "You found something in the study," Saren said. Jiwoo's hands went still. Then he kept moving. "A photograph, I know. I saw you put it back." Jiwoo set down the wooden spoon. He turned to face Saren. "Tell me," he said. "You said you would." Saren was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the counter, then at his hands, then at Jiwoo. "Lee Junho," he said. "The name of the person in the photograph. We were together. For 2 years, I thought." He paused. The pause had weight. "Hyun and I moved in the same business circles. Junho knew him. I did not know how well until I found out they had been in contact. For most of that 2 years, Jiwoo felt cold. Hyun introduced them, originally, and then kept Junho close. He collected useful things, useful people, information." Something came into Saren's voice that was not anger but lived next door to it. "When Junho ended things with me, I thought it was simply the end of a relationship. Then I started to understand what had been passed through that connection. Information about my company. Small things that added up. Business decisions that went wrong because someone knew they would. A year of my professional life that I had to rebuild." Jiwoo sat down on the kitchen stool opposite him. "Hyun used Junho to get to you," Jiwoo said. "Yes. Why?" "Because I had refused to give his company a contract he felt entitled to. Because Hyun does not accept no. He finds a different way in." Jiwoo thought about the 7 months. He thought about the person he had seen in his bedroom. He thought about Hyun's face at the gala. Not the guilt he had read there, but the strategy of it. "He's been doing this to both of us," Jiwoo said. "Yes." Jiwoo pressed his hands flat on the counter. "And the photograph, you kept it." Saren looked at him. "I kept it because I don't want to forget what being unguarded costs." It was the most honest thing Jiwoo had ever heard from him. It was also the saddest. "That's not the right lesson," Jiwoo said softly. Saren looked at him. "The lesson isn't to never be unguarded," Jiwoo said. "The lesson is that Hyun is a predator who looks for open things and pries them apart." He met Saren's eyes. "That's about him, not about you." The kitchen was very quiet. Saren looked at Jiwoo for a long time. Something moved in his face that was real and unguarded, and Jiwoo suspected, fairly rare. "You are," Saren said slowly. "Not what I expected. What did you expect?" "Someone easier to keep at a distance." Jiwoo felt his heart do something complicated. "Is that what you've been trying to do?" he said. Saren did not answer. But his silence was its own kind of answer, and this time it was not a cold one. The dinner burned slightly because neither of them moved to attend to it for a few minutes. Saren ate it anyway, without comment, and said it was good. The deal was supposed to last 6 weeks. The gala was done. The business rejection was public record. By any reasonable measure, Saren had accomplished what he set out to do. Jiwoo had a small amount of money, more than enough to put down on a new apartment, and a freelance project that had come in big enough to give him breathing room for months. There was no practical reason to stay. Jiwoo packed his bag on a Sunday morning. He did it slowly, folding things carefully, and he told himself it was because he was being neat and not because part of him was stalling. Saren was in the kitchen when Jiwoo came out with the bag. He looked at it. His face did not change. "You're leaving," Saren said. "The deal was 6 weeks," Jiwoo said. "It's been 6 weeks. Yes." Jiwoo stood there. He waited for Saren to say something else. He had been waiting, he realized, for Saren to say something else for about 2 weeks. Some signal, some word, something. Saren said nothing. "Okay," Jiwoo said. "I'll get my last few nice things and stay." It was quiet. One word, but it was not a casual word. Saren was looking at him with an expression that had nothing neutral in it at all. Jiwoo went still. "The deal is done," Jiwoo said. "I know. So this would be different." "Yes." "Different how?" Jiwoo said. His voice came out lower than he intended. Saren crossed the kitchen. He stopped in front of Jiwoo at a reasonable distance, but close enough that Jiwoo had to look up slightly to meet his eyes. "I have been," Saren started, then stopped. "Tried again. I have not been in a real relationship since Junho, by choice, because I decided the cost was too high." "I know," Jiwoo said. "I am aware that I am difficult. I work too much. I do not communicate well in emotional situations. I will probably make you frustrated on a near daily basis. I'm already frustrated on a near daily basis, Jiwoo said. You're also the person who noticed my handshakes when I'm nervous, and made me tea every evening, and ate burned food without saying anything. Something broke open in Saren's expression. Just slightly, just enough. The tea, he said, like he had not expected Jiwoo to mention it. The tea, Jiwoo confirmed. Saren reached out slowly. He took Jiwoo's hand, the one that shook, and held it. Stay, he said again. Not as a deal, not as an arrangement. Jiwoo looked at their hands. He looked up at Saren, and then his phone rang. They both went still. Jiwoo looked at the screen. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something made him answer. Shin Jiwoo? The voice was unfamiliar, tense. This is Lee Junho. The world rearranged itself in a very strange way. Jiwoo looked at Saren. Saren saw something in Jiwoo's face and went very alert. Junho, Jiwoo said carefully. A pause. I need to talk to both of you. Kang Yun. He has something. Something about Han Saren's company that he's planning to make public. It's not true, but he has documents that look real, and he has a contact in the press. Another pause. I helped him build them 2 years ago. I didn't know what he was going to use them for. But I know now, and I can't. A shaky exhale. I can't let it happen again. Jiwoo met Itsun's eyes. The warmth of a moment ago had not gone. But something had been added to it. Something sharp and clear and focused. Come over, Jiwoo said. Now. He hung up. He put his bag down. He looked at Saren. We have a problem, Jiwoo said. We, Saren said. The word was careful, deliberate. We, Jiwoo said. Something in Saren's face settled, certain, decided. Tell me everything, Saren said, and moved toward the study. Jiwoo followed. He had put the bag down. He was not leaving. Lee Junho sat on Saren's couch, looking like a man who had not slept in several days. He was thinner than the photograph. There were shadows under his eyes and his hands would not stay still. He kept looking at Saren and then away, like looking at him for too long was painful. Saren sat in the chair across from him. His face was blank. Jiwoo sat beside Junho, not close, just present. Junho talked. He talked for almost an hour. He explained the documents. Fabricated financial records that suggested Han Group had engaged in certain illegal practices. He explained how Yun had commissioned them. How Junho had helped construct the paper trail because he stopped here, jaw tight, because he had been afraid of Yun, of losing what Yun had promised him, of the way Yun could smile at you and hold the whole of your future in his hands and make you feel like the smartest choice you could make was whatever he wanted. I know what he does, Saren said. His voice was very even. I am not asking why. Junho looked at him. I'm asking what he has now, Saren continued. What he can use and who his press contact is, Junho told him. When it was over, Saren stood and went into the study without another word. Jiwoo heard him on the phone almost immediately, calm and precise, putting things in motion with the quiet efficiency of someone who had handled crises before. Jiwoo made tea for Junho because it was the thing he knew how to do. You loved him. Not as a question. Junho wrapped his hands around the cup. I thought I did. I think I loved the way he made me feel seen. And then I realized, he looked at the cup. He doesn't actually see people. He reads them, figures out what they need and becomes that, until he doesn't need you anymore. Jiwoo thought about the tomatoes, the cake, the careful picture of a future. Yeah, he said quietly. They sat in the silence of shared understanding for a moment. He and Saren, Junho said. It wasn't just business, you know. Yun was threatened by him. Genuinely threatened. Because Saren is the only person he has never been able to read properly. Jiwoo looked toward the study. Why not, he said. Because Saren doesn't need things the way other people do, Junho said. He's very complete on his own. There's no gap to fill, no one to exploit. It drove Yun insane. He paused. But he needs things now, doesn't he? Something changed. Jiwoo did not answer. Junho's mouth curved faintly. Never mind, he said. Over the next 4 days, Saren systematically dismantled everything Yun had built. The documents were exposed as fabrications before they could reach the press. The contact was traced and, through channels Jiwoo did not fully understand and chose not to ask too many questions about, neutralized. Hyun's company, already under financial pressure, found itself facing 2 simultaneous audits from regulatory bodies who had received very detailed anonymous reports. Jiwoo watched it happen from the penthouse, occasionally helping where he could. Writing a timeline, proofreading a statement, making extremely large amounts of coffee, and was struck, repeatedly, by the strange fact that this cold and careful person had become the person he most trusted in the world in the space of 6 weeks. On the 5th day, it was over. Hyun released a public statement withdrawing from several business endeavors. He was gone, at least from their immediate orbit, in the way that powerful people sometimes disappeared when their power was quietly and precisely removed. Saren came home that evening and stood in the kitchen doorway and said, "It's done." Jiwoo looked up from the counter. "You okay?" A pause. "Yes, you?" "Yeah." Jiwoo turned back to the cutting board. "I think it's the first time I've thought about him and not felt anything particular, just done." "Good," Saren said. He came into the kitchen. He stood next to Jiwoo at the counter, close enough that their arms nearly touched, and picked up a piece of the cucumber Jiwoo had been cutting and ate it without asking. Jiwoo looked at him. Saren looked back. That not quite a smile was at the corner of his mouth. "You could just ask," Jiwoo said. "You wouldn't have said no. That's not the point. It seems like the central point." Jiwoo put the knife down. He turned to face Saren fully. Saren was already looking at him, had been looking at him, in that direct and careful way that Jiwoo had stopped flinching at and started leaning toward. "You said stay," Jiwoo said. "Before everything happened, you said stay." Saren did not look away. "Yes. And I did stay." "So what comes next?" Jiwoo asked. "Because I'm standing in your kitchen, making dinner, and I have a graphic novel I've been sketching on your balcony for 2 weeks and He stopped. His voice had gone a little unsteady. "I want to know if this is something, an actual something." Saren reached up and put his hand against the side of Jiwoo's face. It was the first time he had done that. It was careful, like something he had thought about. "It has been a something," Saren said quietly, "since the night with the cake." Jiwoo's eyes went warm before he could stop them. "You're going to make me cry over a cake story," Jiwoo said. "I will probably make you cry over many things," Saren said. "I said I was difficult. You also made me tea every night. I will continue to give you tea every night." Jiwoo laughed. Actually laughed, full and real, and Saren watched him like it was a thing he intended to keep watching, like he was not going to look away. "Okay," Jiwoo said. "This is a something. An actual something." "Yes," Saren said. Jiwoo's leaned forward and rested his forehead against Saren's shoulder. Saren's arm came around him slowly, then securely, like he had decided and was not uncertain about it. They stood in the kitchen like that, warm and still and completely ordinary. The city moved outside the windows. The dinner finished cooking. The balcony tomatoes, 3 small potted plants Jiwoo had brought from the old apartment, and Saren had never once asked him to move, sat in the evening light. It was not the future Jiwoo had planned. It was better. It was real.